On July 5th, President Biden tweeted out, "Every American willing to work hard should be able to get a job no matter where they are and keep their roots where they grew up." That's Bidenomics. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Well, I'd love to know exactly how you could make this happen, and at what cost. I get that lots of people don't want to move away from where they grew up, but sometimes that's the best thing you can do to make your life better. As far as I can tell, Biden's answer to this question is protectionism. A less talked about aspect of Biden's presidency is his economic nationalism. Peter Zion has argued that Biden has governed as an even more protectionist president than Donald Trump did, and I think that's more or less true. And as a study from Credit Suisse showed, prior to Donald Trump's presidency, the United States was the most protectionist major economy on Earth. If protectionism was the way to keep people grounded in their communities where they grew up, assuming that that's even desirable, then it probably should have worked a while ago. I have to say, sometimes as a content creator, you don't know when you're going to piss off portions of your audience, and the reaction takes you by surprise. One of the times I took on this idea that it's some sort of policy failure that you can't get a factory job in your hometown, as if it's your birthright, I got a lot of pushback. In my video, Breaking Points, the worst political show on YouTube, I criticized Sagar and Jati for misrepresenting Kevin D. Williamson. Here's the relevant portion of that video. Here's Sagar talking about my favorite living writer, Kevin D. Williamson.
Kevin has always had this problem. He's the guy who said, let the white working class die. He's like, well, what is so great about the working class anyway? They should all just move, like their towns
just
suck.
Just like upfront about his elitism and contemptuousness.
Look, he's a deeply libertarian guy. And this is where it all leads to, which is that you devalue what makes human experience actually worth being human, and you make everything people into economic units.
Williamson was accused of this during the 2016 presidential election based on an article he wrote titled Chaos in the Family, Chaos in the State: The White Working Class's Dysfunction. In this piece, Williamson is responding in part to Michael Brendan Dougherty, a conservative populist and fellow National Review writer who once appeared on Breaking Points for a long-form interview. In 2016, Dougherty argued that conservative elites, and elites generally, have failed the white working class and are directly responsible for much of the malaise and suffering we see in parts of the country, like Appalachia and the Rust Belt. This is exactly the sort of thing you'd hear on Breaking Points. Regarding this elite bashing, Williamson wrote, "It is also immoral. It is immoral because it perpetuates a lie, that the white working class that finds itself attracted to Trump has been victimized by outside forces. It hasn't. The white middle class may like the idea of Trump as a giant pulsing humanoid middle finger held up in the face of the cathedral. They may sing hymns to Trump the Destroyer and whisper darkly about globalists and, odious, stupid term, the establishment. But nobody did this to them. They failed themselves. If you spend time in hardscrabble, white upstate New York, or eastern Kentucky, or my own native West Texas, and you take an honest look at the welfare dependency, the drug and alcohol addiction, the family anarchy, which is to say the well-being of human children with all the respect and wisdom of a stray dog, you will come to an awful realization. It wasn't Beijing, it wasn't even Washington, as bad as Washington can be. It wasn't immigrants from Mexico, excessive and problematic as our current immigration levels are. It wasn't any of that. Nothing happened to them. There wasn't some awful disaster, there wasn't a war or a famine or a plague or a foreign occupation. Even the economic changes of the past few decades do very little to explain the dysfunction and negligence, and the incomprehensible malice of poor white America. So the gypsum, business, and garbut ain't what it used to be. There is more to life in the 21st century than wallboard and cheap sentimentality about how the man closed the factories down. The truth about these dysfunctional, downscale communities is that they deserve to die. Economically, they are negative assets. Morally, they are indefensible. Forget all your cheap theatrical Bruce Springsteen crap. Forget your sanctimony about struggling Rust Belt factory towns, and your conspiracy theories about the wily Orientals stealing our jobs. Forget your goddamn gypsum. And if he has a problem with that, forget Ed Burke, too. The white American underclass is enthralled to a vicious, selfish culture whose main products are misery and used heroin needles. Donald Trump's speeches make them feel good. So does Oxycontin. What they need isn't analgesics, literal or political. They need real opportunity, which means that they need real change, which means they need a U-Haul. If you want to live, get out of garbut. Williamson does not want the white working class to die. He wants these dysfunctional communities that many of them currently reside in to die. These places have no inherent value in and of themselves, and the best way for the current residents to survive and rise above their current standard of living is to leave these sinkholes of malaise behind and relocate to a place where there is actual opportunity. From what I know about Williamson's own life is that he basically did exactly that. I don't think Sagar was being malicious when he accused Williamson of wanting the white working class to die. I think he was just being lazy. As I said earlier, this is a smear of Williamson that was going around in 2016, and Sagar just picked it up uncritically without bothering to check if it was actually true. In other words, he did exactly the sort of thing that would inspire one of his stupid monologues had the mainstream media done it to a new media personality. More importantly, I want to talk about Williamson's response to populist narratives. In his anti-Williamson screed, Sagar also pushed back against the idea that Americans should move.
This just leads to Ben Shapiro thought, where it's like, why doesn't everybody just move, right? Like, what's so great about living in your hometown?
He made that case as
I'm
well.
Like, actually, a lot of people really like living in their hometown.
And community is supposed to be a really conservative value. Like community institutions and family and rootedness are supposed to be conservative values.
I'm actually sympathetic to what Sagar says here. Several years ago, I moved for a new job. I currently live away from my hometown, my family, and the people I care about, and I long to move back. Unfortunately, there's this thing called adulthood that involves making difficult decisions that have trade-offs. Again, I moved for work, as people often do, and hopefully I will move back eventually, but that's on me. I expect a certain amount of herpaderp from the left when talking about jobs and economics, but a lot of conservatives also reacted negatively when Williamson wrote this. Conservatives love to gloat about how people are leaving progressive states like California, New York, and moving to red states like Florida and Texas. Whenever you bring up crime in American cities, a lot of conservatives tell people that they should leave these places as they're hopeless. For example, in 2020, John Nolte over at Breitbart told people they should abandon Democrat-run cities. Yet, in 2016, when Williamson wrote that the white working class should leave failing communities, Nolte was among the chorus of people accusing Williamson of wanting white working class people to die. It's incredible how, when talking about white working class people, so many conservatives start to sound like 2015 social justice warriors, talking about minorities or other supposedly marginalized groups. These people are the victims of circumstance, and it's the responsibility of the political class to right the wrongs inflicted upon them, as they cannot possibly do that for themselves. After Trump got elected in 2016, we heard a lot of conservatives and populists crow about how the political class forgot about the middle of the country as free trade hollowed it out. Trump, meanwhile, knew what was going on and spoke to people's needs by promising to bring the jobs back. Ironically, a lot of these people are out of touch too. As a lifelong resident of Middle America, let me tell you that every single presidential candidate in my lifetime has made this same pitch. I like to joke that these people think that when God wrote the Constitution, he mandated that manufacturing jobs be located in the Rust Belt. While that's an obvious exaggeration, there are some people who think that any deviation from this is a policy failure. Sagar and Jati praise Biden's CHIPS Act because one of the locations where microchips will be made is in Ohio, as if there's something sacrosanct about the states that border the Great Lakes, such that our industrial policy, aka corporate welfare, should be concentrated in that specific region of the country. Sagar has since advocated for a federal plan to revitalize said communities.
I think we need a major federal program to make things less laissez-faire and more targeted. Right now, for example, the Sun Belt is blowing up, which is great. It's where I grew up, after all. But the industrial Midwest, it's still hemorrhaging. With the right ideas, investment, maybe we can make those cities just as desirable. We could spread the population around to areas that were once thriving. The original promise of the American West was anyone could pick up and take a chance out there. We need to get back to that spirit if we wish to recapture the feeling of possibility that pervaded this country at that time, and to reclaim any real chance that we have at a revival.
I suspect that such a program, in practice, will look very much like the CHIPS Act, in that it will involve large sums of taxpayer dollars going to politically well-connected corporations. I do love the irony of populism. I stand by what I said in that video I referenced earlier. I agree with Williamson. People should leave failing communities and relocate if they think it can improve their lives. Whether it's leaving a major city with a crime problem, or leaving some shithole Rust Belt town that went downhill because the steel mill left in the 80s, sometimes picking up and leaving is one of the best things you can do to actually improve your life. Is it always easy? Of course not. But it's a hell of a lot more effective than sitting around and waiting for a politician or some new law or some derivative new media show like Breaking Points to solve your problems. I have to say, by far the best reaction I got from this video was from Kurt Metzger. Metzger, in case you don't know, is a comedian who has worked in a bunch of different places, but most of you would probably recognize him as a frequent Jimmy Dore Show co-host. After I posted this video, he happened to be talking to my friend Adam, of Adam and Sitch fame, and he said this.
That guy Scuba Steve, I watch him say some stupid. You ever see that guy?
Yeah, I love Scuba Steve. You don't like him?
No, it's like he said the dumbest thing about, because I don't know what his deal is.
He's like a hardcore libertarian. I completely
is that what it is?
I disagree with him so much.
Dude,
and he has giant TDS, but I love Steve to death.
What's TDS?
So. Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh no, I know. He
can't stand Trump
because he hates populism. Because he thinks, and I want to ask, he's got to be young.
Insane.
He can't be an older person. He's got to be a young guy. He's talking about.
You want to debate Steve? I can set it up, man. Steve would love to debate you.
I mean, I'll talk. I'm not trying to have a thing where it's like who won the debate. Like, if
no,
you might have an idea
him,
that I don't get, but let me tell you what he said.
I want you guys to own each other. Come on, it'll be fun.
I hate that shit. Wait, but listen, I would talk to him. Because he's the breaking points is the worst thing on the internet. They're the worst breaking point. Not this guy that we're watching. Breaking points, and he goes because he doesn't like populism, and he's like, it's not the corporation's fault. All these white people,
Crystal, he
goes, all
like
these
that.
white people where I grew up, they're losers. They're on drugs. They didn't get screwed over by politicians and corporations. It's like they have he actually did Horatio Alger bullshit, and I'm like, you got to be a young guy that doesn't know jack shit. Then he talks about, I moved away. I live away from my family. It's hard, but I made a decision for business to like listen, now I think you're a guy who's like borderline incel, and that's why it was easy for you to do all that. He's like, just move. It was like the Sam Kinison joke about why are they starving? Just give them luggage so they can move. Remember that joke?
I had no idea that he had seen any of my videos. And since I confronted him about this, he insists that he was joking about the borderline incel thing, which is fine. But needless to say, he still disagrees with me that people should consider moving to improve their economic lot in life. I understand that moving isn't always easy. I'm currently in the middle of a move myself as I write this, and I can confirm that it is a gigantic pain in the ass. But people facing much worse circumstances in the history of our country have made a go of it. Comrade Question on Twitter sent me this Ben Shapiro quotation that I think sums things up nicely. This country was expanded by settlers with horses and wagons, moving into underdeveloped lands seeking opportunity. I don't think it's too much to ask people in dying towns to move a few towns over, if that's where the jobs are. I actually couldn't find the original source for this, but it's true regardless. And it sounds like the sort of thing Ben Shapiro would say. And even if he didn't say it, I don't doubt for a second that he would agree with it. Movement has always been a part of the ethos of this country. Sure, sometimes it's taken the form of creepy pseudo-religious ideas like manifest destiny, but it's been far more common that it's a positive thing, especially for marginalized people. One of the largest movements in this country was the Great Migration, where around 6 million black people, the descendants of slaves, moved out of the rural South to other areas of the country. Now, to be fair, they were only leaving institutional racism of Jim Crow South. It's not like they encountered something truly devastating, like NAFTA. Also, most of these people were sharecroppers down south, a famously lucrative occupation that I'm sure made the expenses of moving easy to handle. Or maybe they were all just borderline incels. Seriously though, are we really now just a country of babies incapable of doing things for ourselves? Sagar and Jati didn't grow up in DC. He's originally from Texas. His parents were originally from India. Kurt Metzger is from New Jersey. I seriously doubt he's lived there his entire life. No, not being able to move to other places for the sake of a career is for other, less capable people. Those poor babies need help because they just can't do it themselves. When I confronted Kirk about this a year or so ago, I gave the best explanation I could for why things aren't the way they were.
Why did I say incel? Who remembers?
I don't know.
Steve, what was
Apropos
this
of-
Yeah, what's the
about?
context? We want to know the drama.
It's my video about breaking points. And of course, you know, they're a populist channel. They have the sob story about, oh, the Rust Belt.
Hey,
they
I
took
like
the jobs
breaking
away.
points.
What's that?
I mean,
I
that's
like
literally what
breaking points.
happened. That's
No,
what
that's
happened.
really not what happened. I'm
what
from
happened.
there.
They're
Yeah.
just of low character, probably.
No, jobs came there because it's the belt around the Great Lakes. It was very expensive to ship, so they built industry around there. Things changed, the economy changed, and industry moved.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to, the things change part, which is deliberate. We've been out, by the way, the problem of everything right now is outsourcing. I mean, right down to
That's not
take your
true.
pick. Of course it is.
No, it's
That's
not.
how we get our COVIDs.
He obviously wasn't convinced, and I suppose that my answer was a tautology, but it seemed like a better idea than to bring up all the ways in which the country has changed since the 1950s. The supposed golden age of American prosperity, and the height of the Rust Belt. Of course, if you want specifics, that's something I've covered repeatedly on this channel, and will continue to do so in the future. But if you don't like the "it changed" explanation, or don't think that things should have changed, I have bad news for you. The world will continue to change, and the economy along with it. Since the COVID lockdowns, we've seen a massive increase in people in certain industries working from home. It turns out that having lots of people stuffed in an office is an expense that isn't completely necessary for certain companies. I expect that we will see this trend continue, and along with it, the very landscapes of cities will change. Downtown areas, which are oftentimes where the most expensive office space is located, will be completely transformed. A lot of restaurants and coffee shops and other businesses that are supported by foot traffic from office workers will probably go along with it. If we're going to see a massive change in white-collar work, why wouldn't we expect to see the geography of jobs change along with it? Work from home probably won't even be the most significant change in the economy in the coming years. It's hard to say exactly how and to what extent AI will change things, but thus far, its displacement seems to be concentrated in white-collar work. Just as mechanical automation changed blue-collar work in the 20th century, AI will change what work looks like for accountants, programmers, writers, artists, and a whole host of other occupations. Do we not think that this will have downstream effects that will change other aspects of our economy? Economic change is nearly inevitable, and while it certainly can be disruptive, especially on a local level, it's preferable to the alternative, which is stagnation. You wouldn't want to live in an economy that isn't changing. And yes, some of these changes will require changes for workers along with them. And yes, that may include where the jobs are located. You can either sit around and sob about how unfair the world is, and how some politician needs to bring a job to you, or you can roll with the punches.